Welcome to Breast Intentions, the podcast where we take off the bra of expectations and dive into honest, empowering conversations. We're your hosts, Nadine and Cynthia, two Canadian girls who swapped snow boots for flip-flops in the Cayman Islands. This is your space to feel seen, supported, and a little less alone. So grab a cup of coffee or a glass of champagne and get ready for your weekly handful of truth, wellness, and empowerment. Welcome back to Breast Intentions. Today we're talking money with Georgie Loxton, founder of Liberty Wealth Partners. Georgie is a wealth expert who goes beyond investments. She helps women understand their behavior around money and build true financial confidence. If you've ever felt behind or unsure, this episode is for you.
Well, welcome to today's episode of Breast Intentions, where we have Georgie Loxton. Georgie Loxton is the owner of Liberty Wealth down here in the Cayman Islands. Welcome.
Thank you, Nadine and Cynthia.
Yeah, so excited to have you today.
We are. Can you give us an introduction of yourself and tell us how you ended up here and how you got into wealth management?
Oh, how I ended up here in Cayman. So I moved out here when I was 26 years old. I'd started my career in London as an investment manager straight out of university. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, to be honest. I'd studied biology with quite a big emphasis on animal behavior, and I sort of just fell into the city. It was 2004. It wasn't the easiest time to get a job because the economy was not great after the dot-com boom and bust, and we'd had Twin Towers and all the stuff that had gone on in the US. So it was a pretty bad time, and I sort of fell into a job, which ended up being amazing. And I met my husband, my now husband, on my first day of my first job in London. And I was training there to be an investment manager, so learning how to analyze businesses and pick stocks, which I actually really, really loved. He was desperate to get out of London. He was a few years older than me. He wanted to do finance somewhere where he could be on an ocean, surf, and go fishing. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up in Cayman in our 20s. And as the story goes, we never looked back, never went back to the UK. Been here for almost 20 years, had all our kids here. And I continued on that path of analysing businesses and picking stocks. So being an investment manager for about a decade. And then I moved out of that and much more into helping individuals, because what I realized I really loved was actually sitting down with people. And I realized that money decisions aren't made in spreadsheets, and they're made in real life with real emotions and with a whole history of someone's childhood and everything that has come before that decision brought into it. And I realized that was what I loved to do. And so I started my business, which was much more financial planning with the investment management. So actually just really helping people in real life with their money to make the best decisions that they can to live the best life that they can live.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. And how long have you been on your own?
In my business?
Yeah.
2018 I set it up. So how many years is that? 7 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been amazing. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on to a couple of questions about money and life and about the intersection between money and life. Why do you think that so many women struggle with financial confidence, especially during midlife?
I think there's quite a few reasons. I think originally, and still I think today, the world of finance is really male dominated. I mean, I go to conferences up in the US and it's all middle-aged white men, right? I'm one of maybe 5 other women in a room of 100 men. It's so male dominated. And I think society has kind of taught women this unconsciously that it's a man's thing, right? Investing is a man thing. Money is a man's thing. And I think that is the underlying message often that women hear. I don't think all women, I'm going to really generalize here when we talk about women. And I know this turns some women off because the women who are really engaged with their finances and, they see money as growth and they love, being really strategic and planning, they find this conversation, I think, a bit, no, that's not me. But I think for the majority of women, they see money as something that men have done because the industry has taught them that. I also think in midlife that we know the mental load that women take on, right? It's huge. And I think if you're in a traditional relationship whereby you got married, you had a job, but then you had kids and you've taken time out of your career, you're running the household, you're doing everything, right? You feel like you're doing everything. I mean, how often do we feel like that as women? I think that money is that one thing that women can just say, oh my God, I don't want to think about that. Like, you deal with that.
Right.
Like, at least let me have one thing that I just don't have to worry about. I think that's quite common. And it's really detrimental, of course, because it creates this massive power imbalance in a marriage or in a partnership between the men and the women, because the woman steps away because they've got so many other things to think and worry about, that's just one thing that they don't really want to get involved in. And then at some point in their lives, they realize that this is something they should take an interest in. You know, either they realize that the marriage maybe is rocky and they know nothing about their family finances, or, you know, heaven forbid, a husband gets sick or drops down dead. At some point in a woman's life, the chances are she is going to be responsible for the finances because we live longer than men. So I think it's kind of that combination of just the industry being really horribly testosterone fueled. I mean, just think today, like finance bros, crypto bros, it's not the finance girls and the crypto girls, right? It's all just this testosterone. It's really, I think that for some women, that's just really, they just don't really want to get involved in that. And I think the messages we hear often as kids, you know, if we come from a family where it was very much the boys and the men, you know, dealt with the money, that kind of lives on. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but those would be my two main kind of reasons why I think women, particularly in midlife, find themselves really feeling like they're not involved, not engaged, and struggling a bit.
What's the percentage of men and women that you work with?
That's a good question. So I work with a lot of families, like couples.
Okay.
So I mean, the majority of my clients, I would say, come in as a couple. But for those that aren't couples, so it's an individual, it is the majority women. I think it's probably about 70% women.
Okay.
But I have a lot of individual single men as well.
Right.
So it's not just women, but yeah.
Okay.
Definitely majority.
And the couples that will end up coming to you, are they coming to you because it was something that was brought on by the woman to say, do you know what, maybe we should, or I want to learn more about this, or do you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say not necessarily either one or the other.
Okay.
I think it's both. I think definitely it's both. I think often it's just this feeling between the two of them that, oh my goodness, we don't really have a plan.
Yeah.
And I think often it is the woman feeling like she wants to be more engaged in it. And, you know, if you have a neutral third party to speak to about it, that helps.
Yeah,
right. I mean,
sure.
I often say to people, my office space is really just a space where people can come and they can talk about money, because when else do you talk about it? And so many couples will say, and this is honestly one of the most rewarding things that I ever hear in my office, is when a husband or a wife says to the other person, I've never told you this, but, and I hear that a lot because they've never sat down and had an honest conversation about money. And one of the questions I often ask people is, what was your first memory of money? And so many couples have never had that conversation. So they come to a marriage. When you think about money, you come into a marriage with all of these beliefs about money, unconscious often, right? The things that you heard about money as a kid, the way your parents were with money. And we never had that conversation to understand our partner's money beliefs, their money history, why they are a certain way about money. And then we just throw in marriage and life and kids. And then, you know, we wonder why, like, it's explosive. And, you know, my friend Carl Richards, who writes, or used to write for the New York Times, he said, conversations about money are electric fence that you don't know is electric, right? Until you touch it. And then you're like, oof, yeah. But it's because we've never understood each other's money beliefs. So that, I think, is like really powerful.
And I guess that same question is asked to people who are coming in solo as well. Like, what is your very first belief?
Totally. So important, because I think especially with women, we have these money stories that we've told ourselves.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. We're all a product of our environment, right? And so it's what we saw our parents or our mother and how she spent money or what she thought of money.
And what she said about money.
Yeah.
You know, we can't afford that. I mean, how many kids grow up just always hearing, like, we can't do that, we can't afford that.
Oh, I did.
Yeah. And then you live in this scarcity mindset, right? Oh, but sometimes we go the opposite way. And when we heard, I can't afford that, people become an overspender. So they kind of go one way.
So there's a big part of psychology.
Huge. If I could go back and study, which hopefully I will do a psychology degree. for sure, because I do think it's absolutely fascinating. And, you know, we wonder why we're emotional about money, which we are. Every single human is emotional about money. I mean, men will often not want to say that they are emotional about money, but we all are. We have to be, because our brains just like aren't evolved to manage money. When you think about a human brain, it hasn't really changed much in 10,000 years. And money and financial markets and investing and stocks that haven't been around for very long, a couple of 100 years, right? Really. And so our brains, you know, I love explaining this. Our brains are evolved for one thing only, and that's to keep us alive. Like that's all our brain actually, and to think as little as possible, because our brain takes up way too much energy, right? So we have all these heuristics where we have shortcuts in our brains. You know, you see something and you just kind of immediately think you know what it is. Like if someone threw a snake in your lap now, a fake snake, you'll react to it as if it's a real one, right? Because your brain's not going to let you sit around to figure out, is that a fake snake or is that a real snake, right? It's just going to say, that's a real snake, I'm going to jump up and scream.
Okay.
So our brains want to do as little as possible, and they are not evolved for thinking about money. They are just evolved for survival, right? Your amygdala is your fight or flight response, and that's what kicks in. If someone puts a snake in your lap, fight or flight, you're going to fight. And when it comes to investing, for example, comes into it, this fight or flight response. So we're not rational. Humans are not rational about money at all. We are very emotional because our brains just want us to survive. So that's how it kind of responds.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah. So kind of going on to the topic of myths and finances. In your experience, what are your biggest money myths that women need to unlearn?
I think, firstly, that it's a man's thing. That would be a good myth to unlearn. That talking about money is somehow unladylike.
Oh,
You know, I
okay.
think that men, and I think this is definitely true with young men. I've had young women come in who will say, all my guy friends, they sit around and they're doing stuff on their phones, they're trading, they're doing things, and I don't really know what they're doing, but they're talking about it all the time, and I want a piece of that, but I don't know what it is that they're really up to. I think men talk about money much more easily because historically it has been their thing, and I think women find it maybe harder to talk about money. So that would be a myth to unlearn. I think also that money is hard would be a myth to unlearn. Money is emotional, but once we can unpack that, the actual steps around money that we need to take in order to build wealth are really, really simple. They're really simple steps. I think my industry and my profession loves to overcomplicate it because we put in all these words and terms that people don't understand. And that kind of is self-serving in many ways because an advisor wants to make it complicated so that they can say, you need me, right? To manage this for you because it's really complicated. It's actually really straightforward. The steps are very straightforward. And I think there are definitely inherent differences in how men and women respond to risk. So this has been studied and has been shown to be true, that men are more willing to take risks than women are.
Is there a reason why?
They haven't really come up with a reason why, but my guess would it is that it's an evolutionary thing. If you think back to how we survived on the plains of Africa, the men went out and hunted. The women didn't go out and hunt. We stayed home, right? And so men have always taken risks. They've always been out there kind of being the provider. Now, we live in a very different world to that today. We don't live in a world where that's the case, where the man has to go out. I mean, have you ever opened the fridge, or your husband's opened the fridge and they can't see something that's right in front of them? And my husband always jokes it's because it's not moving, right? Because men are evolved to see things that are moving, you know, because their prey was moving and the thing in the fridge is not moving. So I think there are those real differences, and they've, as I said, they've shown this in many, many research studies that women are
safer.
But yes, they don't like taking risks. So there's this thing called loss aversion. There are many behavioral biases that we humans have when it comes to behavioral finance and money. But one is called loss aversion, which is for all humans, male or female, we dislike a loss much more than we like the equivalent gain. So we feel the pain of losing $20 much more than we feel the joy of making $20. Okay, so it's called loss aversion, and it leads to us doing all sorts of strange things with our money. But women seem to feel that loss aversion more than men do. So we'll fixate much more on the chance that we can lose money than we will on the chance that we're going to make money. So that leads to us women holding a lot more cash than men do, which can be really detrimental in the long run, and investing our money less. However, in my experience, when women do invest their money, when they understand it and they feel confident to do that, women make amazing investors. Like, I think, then again, the research showed this, actually, in many cases, better investors than men, because we are not prone to this thing called overconfidence. So the men, right? And this, again, this was there, it's real data and research. Men are very overconfident when it comes to their abilities with money. They think they can predict the future. Therefore, they trade a lot more than women. They'll buy and sell stocks all the time. And that actually erodes their returns. Whereas women, when we do actually invest, we're much more able to put it into the markets and leave it and forget about it, which makes us really, really good long-term, patient, disciplined investors. So women are amazing when they do it, but they'll be more cautious in the sense they'll want more cash in the bank than a man. Often in my conversations with men and women, I'll have to convince the man to keep cash. They'll kind of want to invest everything. And I'll say, no, you have to keep cash in the bank. Cash in the bank is really important for all of these reasons. Whereas a woman will always kind of go more the other way and want to keep more cash. And I'll have to say, you've got a lot of cash, like probably too much cash. Like if you lost your job tomorrow, you're living on this cash for like 10 years. You don't need that much cash. Some of that money needs to get invested. So there's definitely differences in how we view risk. And, more men are entrepreneurs, more men set up businesses. Look at the crypto world. It's very male dominated. They're just more comfortable for whatever reason. It's really detrimental to us in the long run because we still earn less than men. We take more time out of our careers than men do to care for our kids. Later on in our careers, women step out more often than men do to care for their parents. So there's a lot of research around women, leaving their careers early because they have to go look after a parent. That generally falls on the woman, not on the man. So we're working for less years. Therefore, actually, what we really need to do is invest more than men if we want to be at the same point, when we retire.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and now we're just starting to see, which is one of the big things that we talk about, is also women stepping out during menopause.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
So
I feel like that's where the confidence could play a role as well, because in midlife, going through menopause, we often lose some of our confidence.
I've never thought about that as how it relates to money.
Yeah, I'm sure it would translate over to money.
I mean, there's so much that goes on, isn't there, during the menopause psychologically?
Yeah.
Absolutely, it would translate.
When a woman has a thought about it's too late to start investing, what is some advice that you give them?
Well, it's never too late. I mean, it's never too late to do anything, is it? My dad is, I keep meaning to write a blog about this, but my dad is 80, almost 81, and he has not moved in about 15 years. Really, really sedentary. Physically.
Okay.
He'd got to the point where he was heading for a wheelchair. And he started going to the gym and he started going to CrossFit and he started lifting weights, and it's amazing. And if anyone ever thinks it's too late to do something, then you need to look at someone who starts exercising when they're 80, having not.
I think you posted about
this. It's amazing. And so it's never too late. And with money, with health, with anything, I mean, we are where we are today. We can't change where we are. And I think, one thing that's so important for women is just to sit with that and just say, I make a joke about you have to put on a cap and it says no shame, no blame, right? Like if we can think about our money or our health or whatever it is with that no shame, no blame, we are where we are today.
Because that would be maybe a place where, at least from my experience or from as a woman, I might think like, no, I'm ashamed. No, this is where I am. I don't really want to talk about it. I wish I was in a different place, and to spend a lot of time wishing. And it doesn't really matter because this is where we are. And so, but getting past that shame and talking about it or doing something about it, that would be a barrier, I feel like, for a lot of people.
I think it is. Yeah. And I think that is where other women can really help. If women start talking about money, that's going to help.
Yeah.
And just understanding that A, where you are today, and B, there is always time to change your financial life and your financial future. So, one thing when we think about money and how much we have and how much we might have into the future is that we'll always, and this is not a female thing, this is a human thing, we'll always think in very linear terms. Like if I have, I know what 6 + 6 + 6 + 6 is. But when you invest your money, and this is particularly important for people who haven't invested before, so they haven't experienced this, it doesn't work in a linear fashion. It works in a exponential fashion, right? So it kind of becomes 6 × 6 × 6 × 6, right? Because this thing called compound interest, which is you start making money on your money, and then your money starts interest on interest, and it's like a snowball that rolls down a hill. And I think it's really common for people just think, oh, there's nothing I can do, because they're thinking in those very linear terms, as opposed to understanding what can actually happen
or
to
also
your money when you start investing.
That's for rich people.
That's for rich people, yeah. Like I need a lot of money to start. Yeah. Yeah, and I think going back to those money beliefs, I think a lot of people grew up hearing that, right? Kind of investing is for rich people, or rich people are bad somehow. And I think money guilt can be a real thing in, I think maybe more common in women, where successful women who have made a lot of money almost have this guilt around it. And therefore they kind of become almost money avoiders. They don't want to talk about it. They'll often be giving a lot away. I've seen that often. They'll be very, very overly generous with their money to their detriment.
Right.
And they will spend a lot of money. And it's like, sort of like, I shouldn't have it. There's this unconscious underlying belief that I'm sort of not worthy of it. I shouldn't have it. And therefore I'm going to, although I'm earning a lot, I'm going to give it away. I'm going to spend it so that I don't keep it.
Yeah. I've also heard some people say that, some people say that they feel like they have been, I guess, avoiding money or keeping money at a distance because people, in their experience, people who have money are bad people. So subconsciously, or they've been blocking themselves from
money
that.
Is bad, right?
Yeah.
But it's not, is it?
I know.
Mean, it's amazing. And if you treat it well and you honor it, then you can do the most amazing things with it. I mean, not just for your life, but for other people's lives. I mean, think about the lives that we can change with our money, and you can do incredible things for the world and for other humans.
What are some common mistakes women make when planning for their financial future?
Well, I think the most common one is not planning for their financial future and relying on somebody else to do that for them. I mean, that's the biggest mistake, as we said at the start, not being engaged and letting somebody else make those decisions. And I do think that's really common in traditional relationships, whereby, the woman steps out of their career to look after the kids. It's left to somebody else and they've got that covered, and I don't really need to worry. I think that is by far and away the most common mistake. But then I suppose the next thing is, if you are involved in your money life, is not investing and not investing enough. But as I said, I think that when women understand it, they make really, really good investors. And it's not actually a complicated topic, but we're not taught it. And I think I often hear women say, I should be better at this. I should know this. I'm terrible with money. Women will say that all the time. And I say, no, you shouldn't. Did anyone ever teach you about it? No. It's like, we don't say we should understand astrophysics, right? No one taught you. If someone had taught you it, you might understand it, but no one ever taught it to you. And you're just sent out in the world kind of to figure it out yourself. And some people do, but most people don't.
I also think there's a side too that you don't know where to look. Like you don't even know who to ask. The reason why I know more about it is because I met you, I don't even know how many years ago. And that was, I think, when we had worked together a little bit with a presentation that we had done. And I had learned about you before that. But it was just not really something that was in my world that I had really heard people talk about.
No. Unless you grow up in a family where they do talk about it.
Right.
Which I think is rare.
Yeah.
Then you don't learn about it. And so how or why would or should you understand it? Yeah,
it makes sense. Even women that are younger as well, like where should they take those first steps? in looking into securing their financial future?
I think a book is a really good place to start.
Okay.
I think
Do you have one?
Conversations. I was thinking about this. There are so many books written about women specifically and money. But I think the best book that's ever been written about money was not specifically written for women. It was written by Morgan Housel, and a book called The Psychology of Money. It's a terrible title, but it's the most amazing book for men and women. And it's the book I recommend to everybody to read. It will completely change how you think about money. It's amazing. So The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I think having conversations with other women, especially a woman who you think they might know something, right? Because there's always that woman like, I think she might have a money life sorted. I'm gonna what does she do? Maybe she works with somebody who helps her, because I think that does give a lot of peace of mind to women if they can have somebody to help them with it, as opposed to trying to do it alone.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I do those women who lead mastermind dinners, and I do have to say, so at each of the dinners, now I'm going to give it away, but at each of the dinners, I put a question underneath your plate and I hide it. And every person has to answer that question. But I would say, and it probably trickles down from me and my past, is nothing. There's no questions ever asked about money, or I guess maybe I have one about, what was your best investment or something like that. But
I'd love to know what people's responses to that question is.
It's always not what I think it is. Yeah.
So not a financial investment? No.
Yeah. No. And I think a lot of it does have to do with what you were saying, where women just don't really want to talk about it.
And you avoid asking those questions.
And I avoid asking those questions because of my background and the way that I was brought up. Is I don't want to ask someone a question and put them on the spot and make them feel uncomfortable. And, that's what goes through my
imagine
head.
saying to your friend, how much money do you have in your bank?
Well, I would never
How
ask
much money
that.
do you have invested?
Never ask
Of
that.
course, no one would.
No.
But would speak about all this other stuff, right?
Yeah.
All this other stuff.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to working women and salaries, it's really detrimental, because I'm sure it's part of the reason that we have a pay gap is because women don't talk about it, so they don't know. If we spoke about it, we'd understand that women are being paid less for the same job. But because that conversation never happens, women kind of just sort of go along thinking everything's okay and not understanding that pay gap is there.
Right. What's your take on financial independence? How much is enough, and how do women know if they're on track?
How much is enough? I mean, this is the biggest question for humans ever, right? Because the goalposts always keep moving, and they move and they move. And if you think this is enough, then you get there, and then it's that, it just goes back further and further. I think that is the biggest challenge for every human, is how much is enough. But financial independence, I think, is really important, and it does mean something, or financial freedom. I always say it's a bit of a trite term, but to me, what it means is being able to do what you want, when you want, where you want, for as long as you want, with whoever you want. So that's complete autonomy over your life. And it's not that anybody, male or female, wants to wake up and do nothing. And often people who are financially free will continue to work in some capacity, but you have the autonomy over it. You're the decision maker about whether you go to work that day, what clothes you put on, what time you have to sit at your desk, right? Whether you can leave and go pick up your kid from school. I think that is what every human is actually searching for. Every single person that comes into my office articulates that in some way, but they say it differently. But it's always, I just want to do what I want when I want. I don't want money to be the deciding factor.
And it is for most people, because you have to go to work, you have to get your paycheck.
Totally.
But this is, I've heard people say that money is power.
Yeah.
Which is, you're saying autonomy, which is basically the same thing. You get to decide, you get to say no to opportunities if they don't fit with your goal in life. You get to go on a vacation if you want.
Whenever you want.
Some people don't have that luxury because they feel like they have to go to work. Well, not feel like they have to go to work. They have to make the money. They can't take that time off of work. So it's power in your life.
Yeah. Power over the decisions that you make, where the neighborhood that you live in, where your kids go to school, the trips that you take. When and how you work. I think that's what financial independence is. And I think everybody wants that. But people don't really know how to get there.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first step is contacting you.
So the steps are so easy, right? It's like earn a salary to start with. I mean, you've got to have some money coming in to build wealth, right? Spend less than that salary, right? Spend less than you earn. Take some of that you're not spending and invest it, and then just go back and start that cycle again, right? It's just, the steps are really, really simple. We just have to get some money into a place where it's going to grow. Ideally, that's going to be kind of what we call the stock market, but really what the stock market is bits of businesses, right? If you own stocks, you own pieces of businesses. And this is the other thing that I think, and this just isn't, again, it's not a male or female thing. People don't understand the stock market. They just see it as something really scary. It's like a casino chip, and it's not. It's a bit of a business, right? So if you buy Apple shares, Apple stock, you own a share of Apple. Amazing. You don't just want to own shares in one business. You want to own shares in thousands of businesses all across the planet. And if you can just buy a bit of those businesses every single month with the money that you're saving, a bit of the money that you're saving, and you have that set on some kind of automation, and it just goes and it goes and it goes, you can kind of just step away and know that you're doing everything that you need to do to build wealth and to build your financial independence.
So I don't know if this is something that you can answer, but for people who are like very, very green to this and very new to this, when you say a percentage of your income, is there an amount that
you should be?
Yeah.
So it depends on your age.
Does it?
I mean, if you're young and you start this when you're in your 20s, which most people don't, but if if you're so lucky that you've learned this and someone's taught you and they've helped you start investing, and in a way everyone does, because everyone has a pension scheme, and that is, you are investing when you put money into a pension. But if you start when you're young, you might only need to put away 10% of your salary. But if you're starting when you're in your late 40s or 50s and you've only got 10 years left of your working career, obviously that figure has to be quite a lot higher. The good news is often it can be a lot higher because you're at your peak earnings. So I've seen people come in with no investments. They have done nothing, but so much can be done at that point in their career because they are earning really good salaries. The kids may be almost out the door, right? So your school fees are dropping away. You might well have finished paying off your mortgage, and suddenly actually you do have the opportunity to put an awful lot of money away in quite a short period of time, and you're going to be okay. And I think the other thing that is becoming more and more common now is people aren't retiring in the traditional sense. They're not stopping work at 55 or 60 and doing nothing, because we're living so much longer. And so if you find something later in life that you enjoy doing that earns you a little bit of money, the power in that is huge for financial independence. And often that means people actually can walk away from that really full-time, hectic, demanding job earlier than they think, if they're prepared to go do something else that's going to earn them some income, not like they were earning before, but some income to keep them going.
Right. So earlier you said that as humans, it's emotional. Money is emotional. Do you have a piece of advice that you would give clients to help them avoid emotional investing decisions?
To avoid emotional investing decisions, yes, you really need someone to help you, I think.
To get out of your head?
Yeah. I mean, during the big crash in COVID in 2020, when the market fell 35% in 6 weeks, I spent every single day talking clients off the ledge, right? Because something so existential had happened, and it was a crisis that we had never seen before. Every crisis that we go through is unprecedented. Every single one.
Right.
But this was really unprecedented. It was like, oh my gosh, we don't even know if we've got a job tomorrow. People are dying. Businesses don't even have revenue anymore because they can't sell anything. Hotels are closed. Economies are just completely shut down. And people would say, but Georgie, we've never been through anything like this before. The market is never going to recover from this, right? It's never going to recover. I have to get out now before I lose any more. I would say, no, I don't know how we're going to come through it, but I know we will, because every single other crisis that humans have ever been through, and we have been through very, very, very many big, unprecedented crises, we have come out the other side.
I think you wrote a blog on this, didn't you?
Yeah. And the market 6 weeks later turned around and went up, and we've never gone back to those levels.
Right.
I think when left to their own devices, not everyone, but I think most people are going to panic and sell somewhere near the bottom. And we know this from the data. We know this from the data because when you look at flows in and out of the markets and in and out of funds, the biggest flows out are right at the bottom and the biggest flows in are right at the top. Okay, the complete opposite of what we should do,
be,
right?
yeah.
And it's so interesting when we invest because it's the only marketplace where when prices go down, people run out of the store.
Yeah.
Right? We're completely counter cultural when it comes to investing. High prices, we love. Like people pile into investments when they've gone up 100%, right? And they're piling out when they've gone down 35%.
Because we're panicking. Because we're like, oh, I've already lost so much. I can't lose anymore.
Because your brain's telling you you've got to survive. And what your brain's seeing is that your money going down is like you facing death, right? It's like death. So you gotta make yourself safe. And how are you gonna make yourself safe? You're gonna sell everything and you're gonna stick it all in cash until the dust settles, right? I'm just gonna wait until the dust settles. Well, when's the dust gonna settle? Because I tell you, when the dust has settled, like when we're out of COVID, the market has already turned around and it went up months before because the market preempts what's gonna happen, right? It's a great expectation machine. So what was the question? How are you not emotional? You either just don't look, right?
Yeah, right.
And women are really good at that. Like honestly, women are really good at investing their money and then actually really not looking at it.
Because they don't want to know?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the busyness and the mental load and off they go and do their other thing. Like they made a good decision. They know it was a good decision. They thought through their decision. They understood their decision and they're like, okay, I can kind of leave it. So if you're not looking and you don't actually know what's going on, amazing. You're not going to panic and sell.
And if you know that ahead of time, then I think I would be less likely to look. Like if Georgie has told me like, don't look at it, it's in there for the long run, then I think I would be like,
and you trust
got
me.
it.
It's the trust, right? You trust me. Like Georgie's going to let me know if there's something I need to do. And if she doesn't, then I'm not going to worry.
Right.
Yeah, I just worry about other things.
Yeah.
Right.
There's so many other things to worry about. Right. But I do think having someone to help you through that is really important because it is really hard to not make that one, and you only have to make that one big mistake once when you're an investor, i.e. panic out once at the bottom.
And then watch it go up, and then you're like...
And then you're out, and now you're like, what do I do now? The market's now gone up 50% and I'm sitting in cash and I sold when it was down 35%. Right. You're never going to get back into it again. You're just going to be like, I'm done with that thing called investing, right?
Right.
You know, I lost it. The market lost me money is what we think happened. I always say, well, the market can never lose you money. You lost money by your own behavior, right? Because the market always turns around and goes back up. Right. Always has, always will, whatever the crisis, unless we actually, the world ends. But and I joke, you're not going to be worrying about your portfolio at that point.
Very true.
Yeah.
What about just overall emotions with regards to money? Like, I feel like a lot of spending that I might do might be emotional.
Well, I think, again, going back to your childhood, I think if we understand our childhood, ask yourself, what was your first memory of money? It's a really good question. What was your first memory of money? And taking yourself back there to the things that you heard and really get clear on your money story. I think that is the only way we can kind of unravel how we are about money today.
As a kid, I used to hoard my money.
Did you?
Oh, yeah. I thought it was like the greatest thing to build up as much as I could in my bank account. And I would hoard it and I wouldn't touch it. My child does it as well.
Yeah, interesting.
He won't touch his money.
I think
but
I was
also
the opposite.
One of my first memories, though,
she picks up my champagne.
One of my first memories.
I'm totally comfortable talking about money.
Was kind of going along the lines of like if we were to go out and eat, it would be like, don't order the expensive thing on the menu. And I remember that growing up, we weren't allowed to order the expensive thing on the menu. I guess it goes back to even like you were saying with diets, where if parents restrict kids for too long from certain
there
things,
is research in this.
It will go the opposite way.
Yeah, there is definitely research in this that, if they're told not to eat a certain food, they will go hog wild into that food.
And I think it's the same with parenting. If you're parented a certain way, like really either whatever way it was, often your parenting style will go the opposite direction because you don't want to bring up your kids, with whatever that was.
The things that you remember that you didn't like. That were negative.
Yeah.
That's right.
Humans, hey.
I know, fascinating.
And then throw money in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Add money
to
this.
It's like the electric fence. So you don't know it's electric.
Exactly. That's a good analogy. Definitely. What does financial wellness mean to you beyond just numbers in the bank?
well, I don't think it's about numbers in the bank at all, because the way you feel about money, which is the wellness bit, is completely uncorrelated to how much money you have. And I think often the more money people have, the more stressed they are about it, particularly people who have made a lot of money themselves, i.e. they didn't come from wealth.
Yeah.
The more they have to lose.
Right.
And that can become really overwhelming for people when they have a lot of money. So it's completely unrelated to how much you have. You have to do a lot of inner work, right? Beyond the spreadsheet to get to the point where I think you have a true peace of mind around money, which to me is what financial wellness is.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not stressed about money. And that might not be because you have a lot, because if you've managed your money really well and you've got, investments and passive income of $60,000 a year and you live your perfect life on 40, you're never worrying about money, right? You might not look rich to the outside world, but you're doing everything you want. You're living the life you want to live. You've built real, true wealth, and you're not worried. Whereas if you have an income of $1 million a year and your life costs $1 million a year, right? The world thinks you're successful, right? You've got the big house, you've got the fancy cars, you've got everything that society tells you should have, but you're incredibly stressed about money every day. So wellness is, I think, if we put it in numbers, it's, do you have more coming in passively, right? Than you need and that you're spending. But with that is the peace of mind and the ability not to feel stressed about money on a day-to-day basis.
Makes sense?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. People are always closer to it than they think,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What's that?
People are always closer to it than they think, that point of financial independence and wellness.
And I think a big part of it, like you were saying earlier, is that you need to look at it, because a lot of people won't look at it, but then they will go into that mindset of either, I don't have money, or they're shameful, but they actually don't know what it looks like.
Right. So understanding your net worth, if we're going to get into the numbers, that is the most important number you can ever know. And I would say 95% of people that come into my office do not know their net worth. And all it is everything you own less everything you owe, right? So your house less your mortgage, what's in the bank, what's in your pension funds, less, any other debts that you have, right? Whatever that figure is, that is the most important figure. And that, for most people, is so much higher than they know or think. And that's your financial foundation. And what that tells you is if you sold everything and you put all that cash into the bank, that's what you'd have. And for many people, we become so warped living in Cayman. We've become so warped here by the cost of life and the wealth that surround us, that people have no idea that if they took that money somewhere else, they would be financially independent. Like they could live off that for the rest of their lives. Back in the UK, in Canada, in Costa Rica, in France, in Portugal, in so many other places in the world. And when they realise that, that's a huge weight off their shoulders. Not that they're necessarily going to do it, but that they know that they could, right? Again, it's like, okay, well, I might not want to give up my life here and my income that I have here and everything that comes with it. But like if I had to, I know that I could. I know I could take what I have and live really comfortably somewhere else. And that I think is really important. As you say, if you never look at it, you've got no idea. Yeah. And you could just do that on the back of an envelope, right? Just write down like what you think your house worth, whatever else you have, and take off what you owe. And that's your net worth. And that's the figure over time we want to grow. And if we do good financial planning and wise investing, then it is going to grow over time.
Right.
If you could go back and give your 25-year-old self one piece of financial advice, what would it be?
I was terrible with money when I was in my 20s. So at 25, my money life was a mess. I was living in London well beyond my means. I had no idea. I'd never learned anything about money as a kid. My parents never talked about it. My mum was a housewife and was very busy at home. She knew nothing about money, to her detriment, because when I was 11 years old, my dad was a property developer and he was quite successful when I was young, and we lived in a beautiful house. We had a big garden and a swimming pool, and not in a particularly wealthy area. So I knew when I was young that my dad was successful. But when I was 11, his big property development that he was funding in Europe failed. It was when the Gulf War broke out and everything, the UK property market plummeted. And my mum, it turns out, had no idea that my dad had taken our home and used it as collateral on the project. And on the Friday, the bailiffs effectively turned up at our door and we had to be out by the Monday. And I'm one of 5 kids. So my parents and my 4 siblings were homeless, literally homeless for 3 months. We lived in various different places. And my dad slowly got himself back on his feet. But I never learned any good lessons about money as a kid. So in my mid-20s, I was racking up credit cards. I was not responsible at all. So if I could give that person advice, what would I say? It would probably be pay attention, right? Just start paying attention and understand what living within your means means.
The other thing, though, too, is how do I always say that to people? You only know what you know as well. And so by being around your mom, like, in a way, you didn't really have that opportunity to learn any more than what you did. No. And so it was just a big lesson that you had learned. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things for people to understand too, is to not beat yourself up and be so down on yourself because you didn't know and you weren't given an opportunity.
Yeah, well, never given an opportunity to learn. Yeah. And the thing, like, when I look back, that I learned about money was actually that money is really unimportant because my family stayed together. My mum and dad turned what happened into some kind of an adventure, and I continued to have an amazing, happy childhood. And an event that could have been really, really traumatic and torn our family apart. I mean, my mum, you know, could have, there's so many things that could have happened. My parents stayed together, we stayed together. And so I think what I learned was, money just doesn't really matter, right? Because look, we had it, then we had none, but life was still great. Yeah. I got a job when I was 12 years old. I made my own money. So if I wanted something, I could buy it. So it was just kind of, money just doesn't really matter. And it took me a long time to realize that money is really important. It doesn't make us happy necessarily, but it can. Like, it really can if we use it right. Like, it's an opportunity that humans squander every day because the things that they think will make them happy are not the things that make them happy. Right? So we spend it in all the wrong ways. But again, if you start paying attention to money, just paying attention and being aware of what those things are that actually do bring you joy, whether it is the trips or it is the beautiful shoes or it's the amazing house that you can entertain in, or maybe it's the fancy car, or maybe it's the ability to not have to work and just be able to pick up and go and, you know, study in Italy if you want to, whatever the thing is. But if you start becoming aware of that and you start paying attention, then I think amazing things can happen. So when I was 25, I would just tell myself, just pay attention to it and live within your means.
Very
so
good advice.
Not doing that.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to move on to our hot flash and hot take segment. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question. Hot flash is a no-go. We don't like it. We don't want hot flashes. And hot take is a good thing. Okay. Thinking you need a lot of money to start investing.
Well, that is definitely a hot flash.
Yeah.
I mean, you can start investing with $100.
Can you?
Yes.
As little as $100?
Yes. I mean, it's more difficult in Cayman, unfortunately, because we're so limited here by the financial institutions that we have around us. Okay. But yes, you can open up a brokerage account, and you could put $100 into the S&P 500. You buy that one thing. It gives you exposure to 500 businesses in the US. It's a pretty good way to start. And it can cost almost nothing.
Good to know.
Can you do that for kids? Like, can you start investing for children? Or is that
It's harder to have an account in a kid's name in Cayman.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. I mean, if you're in the UK or Canada, you can open up kids' savings, specific kids, you know, taxable or tax-free savings accounts. In Cayman, it's a bit more difficult.
Oh, okay.
It'd have to be in an adult name, I believe. But yeah, you could do it through one of the big brokerages. Yeah.
Okay. Curious.
Talking about money / wealth. Hot flash or hot take?
What's the middle ground? Yeah.
Talking about...
For women, I would say that's a hot take because I do think women need to do it more.
Okay.
But you don't want to be that person that talks about it all the time.
Right. No, that's off-putting.
Like, we all know that person. You go, they're just like, oh my goodness, they won't stop talking about how much money they have. I mean, you don't want that either, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I would say for women, that's a hot take.
Okay.
Talk about it.
And it doesn't necessarily even have to be like, guess how much money I made.
It doesn't.
It's just talking about like investing or talking about.
Do you invest? How do you do it? What do you do? When did you start? Those kind of questions.
Right.
that women could start having together.
Yeah. I'll start saving or investing when I make more.
Yeah, that's one day, right? One day it will come.
Yeah.
No,
Hot flash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one should start investing unless they have some cash in the bank.
Okay.
So that's the first thing before you start investing is, have you saved like a minimum of 3 months of living expenses in cash in the bank?
Yeah.
Because that's your safety net.
Right.
Well,
in case you lose your job or in case you
there's a
have to go
hurricane,
take care of your
the
parents.
roof falls in. Exactly. What you don't want to do is have started investing, then that thing happens. You need the money. The market's gone down 20% or 25%. You've then got to pull it out.
Right.
You lose money, as we were saying before. You then blame the market. I'm not doing that again.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So you want to be able to have the cash first. And what that shows also is if you've been able to save, let's say 3 months of living expenses, like you've flexed that muscle, right? You've got that savings muscle going, you're doing it, you're putting a bit of money aside every month. Then you can start allocating that money that you were putting into cash in the bank into an investment portfolio.
Yeah. Okay. And our last one is financial education is self-care.
Absolutely.
Yes. Hot take. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an important part of our life, isn't it? And it causes people so much stress. It's like this constant anxiety for people, money. I mean, it's the biggest. I think I heard a podcast the other day that said for people in midlife, it's their biggest worry. Money
I was going to say
believe
it probably is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would even go as far as to say not even just in midlife. I feel like it
All the way
increases
through.
in midlife, but I feel like some people I know.
Yeah. Because in midlife,
worried about money
you're suddenly
a
looking
lot.
you're looking up into your future and you realize, crikey,
Yep.
I don't have that many more years to work. And especially for women who are by themselves and you don't have anyone else to depend on, it's that realization that I have to do this myself. I have to start looking after myself.
Yeah.
So there isn't anyone else
No, exactly.
to do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But it's never too late.
Good to know.
Yes.
I have some work to do.
We all do.
Yeah.
We all do. Well, tell everyone how we can find you.
So my website is libertywealth.ky. That's the best place to go. Or
Are you on
Instagram,
social
Facebook.
media? Yeah, you are?
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Liberty Wealth.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot of
anyone can
information.
just shoot you a message and
Yeah, there's a
meet you for coffee.
schedule an appointment link on my website. That's
Yeah.
the best thing to do is just click right on that.
And is it a
book in.
consultation that you do
Yeah,
with them? Or?
just always, I will meet, everybody and spend an hour talking to them, finding out about them. And even if it's not the right time for them to become a client and start investing, I'm always going to send someone off with, helpful advice to put them on the right track. So don't hesitate.
That's wonderful. So helpful. Well, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Great.
Thank
My
you
favorite
so
thing to talk
much.
about women and money.
Yes.
Yeah.
This
We
was a
really
great
appreciate
conversation.
it. Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Pressed Intentions. We hope you felt seen, supported, and maybe had a few laughs along the way. Don't forget to share, subscribe, rate, and review us. Your support keeps the conversation alive. Follow us on social media for more insights, behind-the-scenes fun, and updates on future episodes. Got a topic you want us to dive into? We'd love to hear from you. Remember, life's too short for bad bras, toxic relationships, and kale you don't actually like. So until next time, stay bold and keep your breast intentions exactly where they belong, front and center. Now go crush midlife, or at least today's to-do list. Cheers!